Stars
Podcast. This is the
Let me talk to you. This is such good shit.
Sorry, I'm just still trying to recuperate from that AEW pay-per-view. Revolution. I certainly wanted to revolt after having endured it. And we will surely get to that in a while, but before we do, let's do some spring cleaning here with the introductions. Figuring that we might generate some new traffic with the Revolution recap at the end. So if you're watching for the first time, welcome to the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. We are here each Monday and Friday on YouTube and Rumble to bring you wrestling recaps on AEW Dynamite and Rampage, NWA Powerrr, weekend pay-per-view events, and we also have a retro review series each Friday. Right now we are currently amidst the archives of NWA World Championship Wrestling from 1986 and World Class Championship Wrestling from 1983. Do our best to bring spice and variety here. So whether you like the classic content or the modern garbage, you get to hear it all on the FSWR channel. Of course, if you would like to hear more in the future and you want to stick around for upcoming content, please do me a solid and subscribe, smash the like button, leave a comment down below, and just stop by each week to check out the show. Or if you're casually listening while you're working out at the gym or grocery shopping or just sitting on your couch, kicking back and relaxing, however you go about listening to audio content. So like I said, we will get to the Revolution recap at the end. Kind of want to build up to that a little bit. So we will do our usual Monday rundowns of Rampage and Powerrr, and then we'll get right into the recap of the pay-per-view at the tail end. Shouldn't take too long to get through the other two reports, so if you are strictly here for the Revolution recap, you can either skip ahead in the video or you can hear me rant about some other stuff in the meantime. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time running down the Rampage show from Friday night. Again, most stuff already tied into the pay-per-view in one way or another, so a lot of it's old news by now. The opening three-way for the TNT Championship with Darby Allin, Andrade, and Sammy Guevara was the typical AEW Spot Fest match that you would come to expect by now. I'm still trying to wrap my head around why this was the match they decided to air on free TV as opposed to putting it on the pay-per-view when the belt was on the line. Lord knows that six-man was anything close to pay-per-view quality. Although, factoring in all the nonsensical garbage they did in this match, maybe putting the match on TV wasn't a bad idea after all. I mean, what's there even to say about it at this point? It was every textbook, prototypical AEW match with green young guys you've ever seen before. They do a bunch of shit. None of it makes any sense. There's no heat or drama to the match. It's just spots. Not to mention the copious amounts of sloppiness that goes on throughout the match. The stacked up stupid plex spot in the corner almost ended horribly, which I'm not all that shocked by. The most hilarious part of the whole match was the ridiculous spot where Andrade is tied up in the Tree of Woe in the corner, and Sammy Guevara does the coast-to-coast from the opposite end of the ring, and in order for Darby to avoid getting hit by Sammy with the dropkick, he proceeds to sprint across the ring and take a bump outside the ring through the middle rope. I'm not kidding, that was a thing that actually happened in this match. And of course, the finish is completely nonsensical. Guevara gives Andrade the GTH in the middle of the ring. Darby then proceeds to shove Sammy out of the ring onto the floor. And because Darby's a complete fucking idiot, instead of just going for the pin immediately, he goes up top for the coffin drop, at which point it is broken up with Sammy doing some kind of top rope flippy dippy splash, which the camera missed entirely. I presume it was a 450. And then Sammy pins Andrade. And, I mean, the crowd liked it. Not surprised. No one knows what good professional wrestling is anymore in 2022, so whenever guys do the machine gun fire, no sell, moves galore fab session, people are going to pop for it, especially the AEW crowd. Of course, if you actually knew a thing or two about what used to make wrestling great, back when it actually used to draw money, you take one look at this and you'd think these guys were taking an acrobatics class at the local dojo. And of course, that's pretty much what modern wrestling is now, so I guess I've just become numb to expecting better of anyone. The House of Black Death Triangle segment was so hysterically WWE light, I almost wanted to pity Tony Khan for signing off on it. The keyword almost. I will admit this, though. The Grim Reaper version of Alex Abrahantes makes me laugh every time I see it. I don't know what it is about Abrahantes in this new Halloween getup, but it comes off so hokey and so fake. I can't help but laugh every time I see it now. And of course, everyone involved here was doing all kinds of scripted WWE verbiage, and long story short, Eric Rowan debuted, and this apparently set up a 6-man at the pay-per-view with both teams. Yes, after they just debuted Buddy Matthews, and we have not seen him work a single match on TV yet, they've now debuted another fucking guy on the opposition. The Keith Lee squash was less impressive than the debut against Private Party. A, because 80% of it happened during the break, and B, they put him in there with a fat schlub. And worst of all, they actually had Keith sell for the guy. Bad. They almost redeemed it with having Keith kill all the wingmen geeks, but of course they had to soil it when they brought out the company mascot at the end. Again, just to remind us of how bad the ladder match would end up being on Sunday, and boy did they ever deliver on that promise. And, I guess I should just throw this out there too. Keith Lee is already just another guy on the show. Really didn't take too long for that reality to come full circle. The best part of the show was the CM Punk pre-tape, where he was sitting in the trainer's room with the bloody face and the bloody shirt and vowing to basically obliterate MJF at the pay-per-view. It was certainly the most effective pay-per-view hype they did on the entire show. Certainly more effective than Jade Cargill and Ty Conti doing a fake brawl in the back, which pretty much amounted to Conti clubbing Jade from behind, and Jade proceeded to lay on the ground like she just got shoved over on the playground. And by the way, Ty clubbing Jade from behind when she's supposed to be the babyface. That was smart. The Serena Deeb 5-minute challenge saw the return of Hikaru Shida coming out and actually beating the shit out of Serena with a kendo stick pretty bad. It was fine. Why give this away on the go-home show? I have no fucking clue, but I mean, they don't know what they're doing, so whatever. I guess in the back of my head, I was kind of hoping for something bigger with the whole 5-minute challenge. I mean, fuck, you think of all the people that randomly debut on the show with no fanfare or hype. At least the 5-minute challenge gives them a guaranteed way to build up a potential new debut at a later date, but whatever. And the main event qualifying match for the last spot in the ladder match, Ethan Page and Christian Cage. Match was fine. It did hit me as soon as they had announced this match on Dynamite. Does anyone remember the last time Christian actually worked a match in AEW before this? Wasn't his whole gimmick outwork everyone? Meanwhile, dude doesn't work a match in like 5 straight months. Of course, he ended up going over, which was probably a good call considering the people that were already involved in the ladder match. At least you could say Christian has some name power to add to it. I still think Ethan has potential to be a solid mid-card or maybe even an upper mid-card player for them if they could just figure out whether or not they wanted to shit or get off the pot with him. Scorpio, I think, is a lost cause at this point, but I mean, they could do something with Ethan if they wanted to. He's got size, he's got promo ability, he's a decent worker from what I've seen. Of course, I could copy and paste that same thing with a lot of other guys on this show that they aren't pushing, you know. All the while, we still gotta push the fucking dweebs like Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends of the world. And again, we'll circle back to the Revolution recap in a minute. Sorry about that. Sound like the press secretary right now. We'll discuss the Revolution pay-per-view in a bit, but let me transition over to talking about NWA Powerrr real quick. Oh, and by the way, the Rampage show was not good. Just thought I might need to mention that. It was good if you like nonsensical ring around the rosy trampoline wrestling, but aside from the Punk pre-tape, it did a horrible job hard selling the Revolution pay-per-view. So anyway, moving on with Powerrr here. This is the March 1st edition, or March 4th, depending on whether or not you watched the show on delay. Opening up things with the Fixers in the ring with Joe Galli. And after Joe Galli ran down the gauntlet for the show, including his announcement of the return of the Pope, which I popped for, he proceeded to pump up the Fixers and the OGK no DQ tag match, which ended up not being a no DQ match, but we'll get to that in a minute. Bradley says that they're fixing to bring the plunder to the OGK and send them packing just like that other company in Baltimore did. All the while, Legursky did a lot of wild screaming and just being plain wacky. And apparently Legursky and Bradley are now 2 over-the-top meathead cartoon characters. At least as far as their promos go. They've also ripped off the Good Brothers nerd gimmick from WWE, which I can confidently say anything that directly rips off the bald-headed geeks or the Bullet Club in any way, shape, or form is a no-go for me, dog. So before we get to the match, Billy Corgan came out to inform everyone that on March 19th and the 20th, NWA will be hosting the Crockett Cup tournament. And for reasons that were purely explained as rewarding the people for supporting the NWA, Corgan decided to scrap the no DQ tag match and book this match to be round 1 of the tournament, which translated to the match being contested under regular tag rules, and I certainly won't complain about that. The next time I see a no DQ plunder match in wrestling will still be too soon. And when I say regular tag rules, I guess I should put an asterisk by that and say regular tag rules for whatever surpasses as regular tag wrestling in 2022. So that led directly into OGK and the Fixers in the first round of the Crockett Cup. And I wrote this down here with OGK a little bit down a ways in my notes, but I'll just go ahead and throw it out at the beginning while it's fresher on my mind. You know, I understand Ring of Honor was in the doldrums for a long time right before they closed shop at the end of last year. And to be honest, you know, we're probably dating back even a few years before that where the bloom was really off the rose with that company in terms of the reality of just how bad the situation was. You know, they lost most of their key talent. The company wasn't generating any buzz. They weren't drawing tickets or fans for their live shows or their pay-per-views. It was just a complete disaster for that company the last few years. And I vaguely recall somewhere around that time they decided to run with Matt Taven as the world champion, which I seem to remember generating a lot of backlash, especially from the more loyal ROH crowd. Yeah, I wasn't really keeping up with ROH during that point, so I can't clarify one way or the other whether or not putting the belt on Taven was a bad idea or not. Judging how business was around that point he was champion, I could easily make the argument that it flopped. And I saw a little bit of Taven's work sporadically here and there over the years. Wouldn't say I was his biggest fan in the world, but I also didn't see him as a complete waste. Bennett, on the other hand, I could argue was horribly wasted in just about every company he ended up in. Ring of Honor, I don't think ever really fully committed enough to the guy when he was really starting to gain traction 8 or 9 years ago to put the belt on him. His TNA run, I remember starting off relatively fine when he showed up with Maria, but that kind of fizzled out unceremoniously, and I don't think they ever put the world title on him at any point. And obviously we remember how his WWE run went, so I don't think we need to get into that. My point with all this is, while I still think it sucks that things didn't really work out for these guys as singles competitors, especially when they had a little bit of momentum behind them in Ring of Honor when it was a full functioning company, I am glad to see these guys are still getting a chance to apply their craft, because there's definitely something there with them as a tag duo in the NWA. They're a great babyface team. They're over with the crowd. They got a lot of Rock and Roll Express elements to the flashiness of the moves they do in their matches. But what I like about what they do is that it's modernized so that it fits the mold of the NWA style, but it still has an upgraded taste for wrestling in 2022 without going so overboard and so over the top that it just looks stupid. I won't ever be content with the suicide topes and things of that nature, but if it's used in moderation and not overdone to death like it is in WWE or AEW, I can at least give them a pass on it. And there was some good stuff in this match. I absolutely hated anything that involved guys illegally just coming into the ring without tags, but we see it all the fucking time anymore. I guess I should just expect it to happen. And while I still don't really understand why Legursky and Bradley are goofy on promos, but they still work like monster heels in their matches, they're actually not as bad of a team as you'd come to expect out of two big lumbering dudes. Legursky's a natural powerhouse guy, but Bradley's got a little bit of agility. Most of their stuff generally looks fine. Not the crispest when it comes to double teams, and I find a lot of the time they end up just getting in each other's way more often than not, just because of how big and girthy they are. But I can at least buy these guys as NWA's monster heel team. And they end up going over in the end to advance in the tournament, which is fine. Crowd didn't like it, but if the fixers are going to be NWA's answer to the Powers of Pain, or, what's another example? Like Dick the Bruiser and Crusher, they need a big powerhouse team to go the distance in the tournament to be seen as the team to beat. So, the match had some choppiness to it at times, and the constant illegal in and outs were annoying as fuck, especially when the ref is just watching it all happen and he's not doing anything to call it out. But get past that, it was fine. And like I said, the crowd was really into it. Up next, we had the return of the Pope to in-ring action, facing off against Mike Knox. It's Pope's first match back since getting laid out by Knox and Cardona at the Hard Times show last year. God, I was so glad they replayed that Pope promo from that Power show a few weeks back, because god damn, that was such a great promo. And, well, up until the last minute, this match was exactly what you would come to hope out of a babyface return match. Pope was a house of fire early on, taking the fight straight to Knox. They did some outside brawling temporarily, but kept it brief enough. Pope got cut off for the heat, which was fine. Especially if they're still selling that he's favoring the concussion or the head trauma from getting slammed into the steps. Pope makes a big comeback at the end. It's all great. Crowd's going nuts. Pope ends up taping his fists up so he can give some stiff shots to Knox. I should note that the ref was also okay with Pope using a blatant taped fist here, which apparently wasn't grounds for a DQ. I don't know. But anyway, Pope gives Knox 3 big blows with the fist. gives him the 3 big elbow drops off the turnbuckles. And then in the most baffling finish imaginable, Pope goes to give Knox the Elijah Express in the corner, and Knox moves out of the way, so Pope goes into the exposed buckle. Pope crumbles into the corner. Knox hits the running cannonball. And then Mike Knox pins Pope clean. Well, they sure shit on that return in a hurry, didn't they? Yeah. I don't know about that one. That really kind of killed Pope flatter than a plate full of piss. Granted, I guess the excuse is Knox had exposed the turnbuckle earlier on, so you could argue Pope has an outing here, but I mean, the problem is, it's not like Pope wasn't already cognizant of the fact that there was an exposed buckle to begin with. I mean, the dude walked past that corner like 4 or 5 different times when the buckle didn't have a pad on it. In fact, the fucker gave Knox an elbow drop on that same turnbuckle. So that just kind of made Pope look like an idiot. Finish aside, though, I really liked the match. Did get a little dull in the middle part there when Knox was on offense and Pope was selling, but other than that, it was a perfectly laid out match, minus the finish. And, you know, maybe if they had executed the exposed buckle spot better, it would have been fine. Because I get what they were going for there, but like I said, the fact that Pope already knew that Knox had ripped the pad off earlier, like all it did was make Pope look stupid when he rammed himself into the exposed corner like 2 minutes after the fact. Like it never clicked. You know, maybe I should try this move in one of the other 3 corners of the ring. Now, for some reason, Pope was fixed with using that particular corner of the ring to hit that finish. Just so happened that very corner was the one that Knox gimmicked. Bad luck. And our main event for the show, the national heavyweight title match between Anthony Don't Call Me Crimson Mayweather and Chris Don't Call Me Masters Adonis. And factoring that we had 2 back-to-back heat finishes in a row, common sense would dictate that this match would put the babyface over clean in the end. Well, they at least got that booked finish, right? And when Gally had mentioned that Adonis has been national champion since March of 2021, the first thing I thought was, I cannot name a single title defense that I've seen Adonis have on this show since then. Now, granted, I only was really starting to pick back up on NWA shows in the late summer of last year, so it is entirely possible that Adonis just crammed in like 37 title defenses beforehand, but I can't name a single championship match he's had. And we were also told during this match that no one has been able to break the Master Lock hold yet, which is the key thing for Crimson to avoid. No one has been able to break the Master Lock. Well, that is everyone except John Cena, apparently. Pretty sure Cena ended up breaking the Master Lock sometime in WWE, didn't he? Well, and by the end of the match, we can also confirm that Mayweather was the first and a half person to break the Master Lock hold. And I'll say this. The crowd loved Anthony Mayweather here. He was certainly more over in this match than he was at any point in his TNA run a decade ago. Chris Adonis is... Well, he's still Chris Adonis. Dude looks like $1 million, but usually never fails in boring the brakes off of me every time I watch him. I think the best way I can sum this match up is with the following. Had the crowd not been so electric from the beginning, this probably would have been a mediocre main event title match, but I'll be damned if the crowd didn't end up making this a relatively enjoyable match to sit through. There was some great heel stuff on the outside with Adonis getting in the fans' faces. I think Mayweather had some family ringside for the match, so that may have added another element to bring the match to life a little bit. And the action was fine for the most part. Mayweather made a nice valiant comeback at the end. They did some good dramatic near falls there, which really worked since the crowd was so into Mayweather winning. And the finish was perfectly done. Adonis has the full Nelson on. Mayweather uses the turnbuckle to flip over and break the grip. Then he gives Adonis the O'Connor roll and gets the pin to win the championship. And they really sold it like it mattered. Yeah, the announcers were elated for it. The crowd went ballistic. Adonis sold it great afterwards with the flash pin. And it actually felt like a championship title change that mattered. Even though last time I checked, Mayweather was ensconced in a feud with Jax Dane, and I can't remember a single thing they did on Powerrr to actually build up to this title match. I mean, not unless it was all done on that NWA USA show that I haven't been watching. But if you look beyond that, it was a really good main event. You would have thought they'd been building up this title change for like 6 months. And, right before the ending credits, they aired the video package for the Trevor Murdoch-Matt Cardona World Heavyweight title match, which is happening next week. And if you've been watching my recaps of the show or you've paid attention to spoilers, you already probably know the outcome of that match. I have no idea how good or bad that match actually is or what they even do for a finish. So the way I see it, I think that'll kind of be the key factor that determines how well the title change was done. And there is still that part of me that's hoping the title switch was done in large part to eventually build up the Pope winning it at some point later in the year. Which again is why him jobbing to Mike Knox on this show left me scratching my head. But that could also be a slow burn thing they're trying to do before getting to that title match. So I'm willing to see where it goes. But this is a really strong show overall. Definitely better than last week by a long shot, even though I still think that 2 out of 3 falls match last week was fantastic. But the crowd was great from beginning to end here. The matches all had some good elements to them. And they finished strong with that Anthony Mayweather title win. So, overall, a thumbs-up hour of NWA programming. And now we wait for next week's big Cardona Murdoch showdown and see how they go about executing the title change. Now comes the main event of the podcast this week, AEW Revolution. And I think it's safe to say we knew what we were in store for when Jim Ross completely forgot what city they were hosting the pay-per-view from. And trust me, that was not JR's only gaffe on the show. And before we really get going with tearing this a new one, I didn't watch any of the buy-in pre-game material. For my money, the only thing that really would have been worth checking out was the Hook QT Marshall match, and even by that token, the reports that I've read says that I probably didn't miss much anyway. The House of Black Death Triangle match, thank Christ they ended up bumping that from the main card, because that go-home angle they did to build up to this on Rampage was just god-awful. And the Layla Hirsch-Chris Statlander match, I presume probably consisted of 2 green girls doing some sloppy-looking wrestling for a while. People probably didn't care all that much, and most people probably forgot about it the minute it was over. We good? Great. Let's move on. So we open with Chris Jericho versus Eddie Kingston. And in the very first spot of the match, Eddie gives Jericho a half-and-half suplex directly on the top of his head. And it took them less than 5 minutes from the onset of the pay-per-view for them to completely disengage me entirely. And after having established that Jericho was not dead upon impact, they proceeded with the match like nothing ever happened. And to be honest, whether or not it was botched or not, I really don't care. I do not need to see a 50-year-old Chris Jericho taking bumps on the top of his cranium. And, I mean, to be honest with you, the first spot was probably the most notable thing about the entire match aside from the hokey finish. AEW's opening bout on a signature pay-per-view, and I'm watching 2 fat, out-of-shape guys having a sloppy, fake Japanese-style match. It started off fucking atrocious. It ended mostly bad. That fake-looking submission that Kingston won with just looks so dumb. course, when your opening spot ends in a guy getting recklessly dumped on his fucking cranium, I guess there really is no other way to go from there other than up. And look, man, I've been praiseworthy of Eddie Kingston in the past, but I think this match was the tipping point for me. You take away the promo work, he's just another carbon copy of Jon Moxley. Only difference is Mox is at least in somewhat better ring shape. And it also goes to show just how amazing CM Punk is at pretty much getting a great match out of anybody he works with. Whatever lightning in a bottle they had with that Kingston Punk program at the tail end of last year has been completely neutered, and my level of care about anything Kingston's involved with on this show right now is right back at ground zero. Like the whole thing afterwards with Jericho refusing to shake Kingston's hand even though he had promised he would if Kingston beat him. God, I can only pray and hope that doesn't mean they're going to continue this feud. Like, I already wasn't digging the vibe of this program to begin with, much less trying to carry it on after the fact. And for what? So Jericho can get his win back? Yeah. Of course, the Punk-Kingston match is a one and done, and they never bring it up on the show after the Full Gear pay-per-view, but Jericho versus Kingston, yeah, that needs to go on for a couple more months, even though no one in their right mind even wants to see it. So they follow that opening calamity with, well, more calamity. This time in the form of the Beta Bucks' nonsensical ring fuckery. Yes, for the AEW World Tag Titles, Beta Bucks, Red Dragon, and the Jurassic Express. And again, I don't know how many times I can replicate this same verbiage, but if you know what Bucks matches are, and you go in with the expectation that virtually everything they do won't make a lick of sense, and it's all mostly choreographed trampoline gymnastics, you may find flashes of good moments. And I use that in loose air quotes. For me, the Bucks are not my flavor of wrestling, and I mean, to tell you the truth, if they'd have just done a normal tag match with Red Dragon and the Jurassic Express, I'd argue it probably would have been a million times better. When the Bucks weren't tagged in and Red Dragon were in control of the offense and they were getting heat on Jungle Boy, the action was good. And as soon as Matt and Nick started their flip-flop stunt show fuckery, I completely tuned out. And, well, I mean, to be candid, I probably tuned out well before the Bucks started their antics. Like the spot where the heels were on the outside and Luchasaurus teased the dive, and all the heels simultaneously sprinted in unison to the other side of the ring like the Scooby-Doo cartoon characters so Jungle Boy could do the flying senton. Like, seriously, what the fuck are we doing here? And of course, I've already talked about my preview predictions part of the show from Friday. My biggest gripe about them booking this match to begin with is the fact that it would evidently turn into revolving around the Elite and Undisputed Era drama instead of being about the actual champions. And I don't know, the more I think about it in hindsight, if they were just going to make the match all about Red Dragon and the Bucks, why the fuck even bother involving the belts in this match? Just book Red Dragon versus the Bucks and then put the Jurassic Express in there against FTR or something. Why not? Would have at least made their champions look like they mattered more than just playing a shadow team in the background here. Of course, when you got the Bucks involved, everybody's a shadow background player. I should mention, not that I'm breaking any new ground here, but I completely lost count of the times illegal guys were in the ring at a given time, or the referee just let long periods of double teams go without him doing anything about it. Like I said, the whole thing was an overly WWE choreographed fuckfest session. It was rapid fire spots, 10,000 near falls, no overarching story or logic or psychology to anything anybody did. Of course, with the Bucks, no shortage of no selling. And again, I kind of phased in and out of the match, so the particulars of what the guys did are kind of hazy by this point. All I remember is that Jungle Boy pinned Matt Jackson with that overhead throw powerbomb combo they do, And the only positive I can take away from it is that at least they didn't go with the overdone WWE trope of multi-man matches with, having the champion steal the win after another team does the damage. Jurassic Express retained. They got the spotlight at the end. And while the match did absolutely nothing to benefit the champs in any way, I'll take what I can get from these people. So then we got the Face of the Revolution ladder match, with the winner having to grab the giant vaginal ring. Christian Cage, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Starks, Wardlow, Keith Lee, and the H&M mascot. And I already knew as soon as Cassidy qualified for the match, I wasn't going to be into any of the things that the guys did. Moreover, my problem was I just got done watching a Crash TV spot fest, and then they immediately followed it up with another Crash TV spot fest. And and just watching all the goofy shit Orange Cassidy was involved with in this match, and all the pre-planned angles and spots that everyone did at various points, it really hit me just how WWE light everything is with these people. Like, seriously, you split screen a side-by-side image of this match with any Money in the Bank ladder match you've ever seen in the last decade. Like, come on, what's the fucking difference? I'm already predisposed to hating multi-man matches as it is, but as soon as you throw ladders and gimmicks in there and everyone goes in with predetermined spots that everyone needs to remember, it all just ends up turning into a giant circus show by the end. And the thing that fucking sucks is I actually liked 5 out of the 6 guys in this match to begin with. I love Ricky Starks, love Hobbs, love Wardlow, I like Keith Lee, Christian's great, Cassidy can go piss up a rope sideways. But I'm watching all these guys do a car wreck match for almost 20 full minutes, and the only thing I could think the entire time it's going on, how is this elevating the profile of any of the guys involved in this match? I'm just thinking in my head, all the different ways that Tony Khan could go about constructively booking all of these guys, and instead, I'm watching them do this. Hobbs and Starks could be a great upper card tag team if AEW would push them like they mattered. They got great facials. Their work is fantastic. They've got a great mouthpiece to carry their promo segments. Keith Lee just showed up. He's had less than a full hands count of wrestling matches on this show, and he's already involved in the big multi-man cluster mess. Christian, I wish we'd see more of him on TV and key storylines because the dude can still go. And he's certainly someone that the young guys would benefit from working a singles program with. But again, instead, I'm just watching these guys jam-packed into a train wreck gimmick match where it's all spot-based and there's nothing to emphasize the strengths of the guys as workers. Of course, the biggest eye-roller of the entire match is the spot after Wardlow kills Keith and Hobbs by shoulder blocking them off the stage. They cut to the ring where Christian is in the middle of pre-setting ladders while nobody's in sight. Never thinks to himself, well, maybe now would be the perfect time to scale the ladder and grab the ring so I can earn a title shot. No, apparently Christian thought it would be more constructive to stack up some ladders for more pre-planned ladder spots. And by the way, I should note, JR screaming at Hobbs and Lee to go back to the ring instead of fighting at the announce booth. Only in modern wrestling would they do something as irrational as have guys brawl away from the fucking ring instead of actually trying to climb the ladder to win the match. Apparently JR's the only one that has his head screwed on somewhat straight. God, in that finishing angle right before Wardlow grabbed the ring, giving Starks that powerbomb on the back of his neck onto the gimmick ladder. Look, are these people really that retarded? Are they really fucking dumb to sign off on a spot like that? With the fucking guy with the history of neck issues, mind you. I can't believe how stupid these people are sometimes. Even AEW manages to find new ways to top their stupidity. Now, Wardlow going over, while yes, kind of predictable, it's still absolutely the right finish. And there was more to come with him later on, so I won't get too ahead of myself here. But God, this match was so lame. I'm sorry. Like, and even when you take out all the Orange Cassidy stupidity, all it did was irk me that much more that AEW is taking 5 real actual talents, and instead of divvying them up into key feuds and paying it off with actual pro wrestling matches and angles that we can get behind and care about, instead Tony Khan would rather cram them all into a multi-man clusterfuck where no one gets over and it's just guys falling and tumbling over shit for 20 minutes. We wonder why wrestling doesn't draw in 2022. So after that match, Tony Schiavone welcomes AEW's newest talent acquisition. I believe JAG roster member number 1483, Isaiah Swerve Scott. Oh no, pardon me. I'm sorry. Swerve Strickland. Because everybody's an extension of their WWE run. Because we already don't have enough time to fill a quarter of the people we have under contract, so fuck it, why not add another one? I think I need to get a drop of jazz from Fresh Prince in here just so I can get the low-key kill drop. Or maybe I'll just start doing it myself. Like as soon as they announced that Scott was signed to a contract, I just looked at the camera and I went, kill. Don't care. Jade Cargill versus Ty Conti for the TBS title was next, and trust me when I tell you, I already knew what I was getting with this one, so I use this match as my bathroom / nightly skincare routine / teeth brushing / doing everything except watching this match break. I listened to the match through my Raycons while it was going on. Visually, I would probably assume it was not all that appealing, and Jade predictably won. And I'm not going to spend any more time on it because, quite frankly, I'm kind of bored of talking about how bad Jade Cargill is. And to tell you the God's honest truth, this show was so ungodly horrible up until this point. I know I sat here and I said that AEW would be absolutely moronic not to main event the dog collar match with CM Punk and MJF. But with how bad the show was up until this point, I don't think I could have made it to the main event if they'd have closed with that match. I really mean that. I needed a boost. I needed to watch something that resembled good professional wrestling. Something with fucking athletes and talents that know what they're doing. So I didn't even care that this didn't main event the show. Even though I knew nothing else would follow it, I didn't care. I just wanted goddamn real professional wrestling. And that's what the fuck I got with this match. A real match with real drama and real characters that were given a reason to care about fighting. Of course, Punk always going the extra mile here and paying attention to the subtle details. So instead of coming out to the cult of personality, he comes out with the nice time machine flashback to his Ring of Honor theme. Man, it's been years since I watched the Roddy Piper-Greg Valentine dog collar match. I know Cody and Brody Lee did a dog collar match a couple years back, but man, as soon as they latched that strap around both guys' necks and MJF was tugging on it while Punk was giving him that smug, I'm about to beat your ass look, like I immediately knew that this was in good hands. And I sat back, totally immersed in this match from beginning to end. I took no notes until the final bell. I just watched and treated this like I was a 4 or 5 year old kid sitting at home watching classic tapes of NWA or Mid-South or whatever kind of territorial wrestling I could get my hands on. For one night, AEW gave me a program where I could just sit back as a fan and enjoy and not have to worry about any fake-looking garbage or modern-day trampoline bullshit that we see in every other match. God, this match was so fantastic. And, everything they did from beginning to end, it was logical, it made sense, it actually built up with drama as the match went along. I love MJF trying to run away from Punk early on, but getting cut off at every pass as, he tries to run out of the ring, but Punk yanks on the chain and he's choking Max in the ropes. I love the spot where MJF opened up the laceration on Punk's head, and while he's beating him down and getting the heat, he grabs the microphone and tells him to quit just like he did 8 years ago. This match had real heat. It had real intensity. It was the exact thing that professional wrestling used to be, and quite frankly, what it still could be today if the people involved with it had a fucking clue what they're doing. Discount the handful of individuals that still get it. And granted, I was kind of skeptical about the whole thumbtack spot. And generally, I think thumbtacks have been done to death in wrestling, and, especially with this fucking company, you see them all the time. As soon as MJF pulled out the bag from under the ring, I don't know. The other problem, too, is, you could hear crickets in the crowd. That's how quiet everyone was for it. The thumbtack spot in pro wrestling anymore, it's just another hardcore spot. But, MJF and Punk are smart enough workers where I could at least look past the sheer absurdness of the thumbtacks and not let it bog the match down. And they handled it well. They built to it. MJF gave Punk the superplex off the top rope onto the tacks, which he ended up missing almost entirely, and most of them landed in Punk's ass. And they didn't do any stupid outlaw garbage that made the thumbtack spot look fake or dumb. If we didn't see tacks every other month on this show, it might have actually meant more. Unfortunately, AEW does hardcore shit so often, thumbtacks just don't mean anything anymore. Not when guys are using pizza cutters and cheese graters and light tubes and fireworks. And that finish, let's talk about that finish for a minute, because not only was this so well done on every conceivable level, but for me, it was the perfect climax with the perfect finish. You got MJF desperately trying to put Punk away, and he knows he can't go it alone. So he calls for his hired gun, Wardlow, to bring out the ring. And out strolls Wardlow. He comes down the ramp, and he goes to give MJF the ring, but as he's copping a feel in his pockets, he looks at MJF and realizes, oh shit, I forgot the ring. So Punk takes advantage of the distraction, hits MJF with the GTS. MJF takes the best pratfall bump you've ever seen right into the tacks, sells it great. Punk and Wardlow do their little stare down exchange, and it's at this point that Wardlow realizes, oh, wait a minute. I remember where I put the ring. And he reaches into his pocket, pulls out the diamond ring, and gives Punk a nice nod and wink of approval. He leaves the ring, and Punk finishes the job. Clocks Max right in the face with the ring. Comeuppance, 1, 2, 3, clean pin. Crowd goes crazy. This might have been one of the best wrestling finishes I've seen in a long-ass time. I don't remember the last time I saw a finish booked in wrestling that was so well done and so fluid as this was. And, I know I talked briefly about the possibility of Wardlow ending up costing MJF the match in the end, and when I look at the execution of the way they handled this, it was well done. Because when you think about the direction they can go from here, it doesn't directly mean that they'll go all in with the full split yet. Now that Wardlow has the guaranteed TNT title shot, that MJF is going to hold this one over him and basically leave him with an ultimatum. Wardlow can either sacrifice his title shot to MJF and get back in his good graces to save his job, or Wardlow can tell MJF to stick it. He takes his TNT title shot, but maybe MJF screws him over and the tension continues from there. Or maybe they go an entirely different direction and they can still get to the full split eventually when the time is right. I still think it's too soon to do the Wardlow power bombs MJF through the table angle like Batista did to Hunter right before Mania. I think if they're going to go down that route, MJF needs to be the AEW World Champion so that Wardlow's face turn feels like it's actually leading to something of value and a little more monumental than just a mid-card AEW belt. But we'll see. Overall, easily match of the night. Definitely an early match of the year candidate, particularly for this company. And, I was going to save this for the end, but since I'm kind of on a roll here, I may as well just throw it out now because it certainly ties in with this match in particular. For a company that calls themselves All Elite Wrestling, it's amazing to me when I watch the show sometimes just how unelite and ununified everyone is in this company, especially when it comes to storylines and programs. I don't know, like, you think about some of the great periods in wrestling history, some of the peak prime years of the business where it was really drawing money, drawing record gates, actually generating real buzz and publicity. And granted, I don't think it's fair to say that there was ever a period in wrestling where you would say 100% of the material being presented was always top-notch quality. Because even in the great eras of wrestling, it had its share of bad storylines and bad programs. But at least I can make an argument that it was more of an 80-20 rule back in the day where when I was watching the real boom period of wrestling and going back and watching old shows when the business was hot, I could at least make a case that 80% of the stuff that I would watch was good. Maybe 20% of it wasn't all that good. And yeah, there's always going to be that problem where you're not going to enjoy every single story or every single feud that a wrestling company does. Unless you're the AEW Mark crowd where everything they do is star-spangled awesome, sunshine, unicorns, and lollipops. But at least I can make a case back in the day that the bad stuff would happen and it wouldn't necessarily leave me angry by the end because there was enough good content for me to overlook it. For AEW, it's the polar opposite problem for me when it comes to this company. It's honestly more like a 90-10 split in terms of bad versus good material. For me, consistently. From week-to-week viewing experience of watching AEW TV, from the point CM Punk showed up in the fall of last year to where we are now, if this show has not featured CM Punk and or MJF in some way, shape, or form, AEW TV has been wretchedly horrible. You throw in the occasional Bryan Danielson stuff, right before he got caught up in the Jon Moxley bullshit. But aside from those three guys, Dynamite and Rampage material has been absolutely awful. And it really goes to show just how divided everyone else is when it comes to the booking of storylines and programs on this show. Whether it's the Beta Bucks doing their thing with Adam Cole and the Elite, when he was there, Cody Rhodes doing his own thing, whether it's the House of Black doing all their hocus-pocus WWE light cinematic garbage. It is amazing to me that it just seems like no one has been paying attention to or taking into consideration anything that CM Punk or MJF have done on the show since last year. The best booked professional wrestling story and program AEW has ever done, bar none. It's like nobody else involved in the company on this show is even paying attention or trying to even steal little nuggets of greatness from that program. Whether it's the Bucks, whether it's Malachi Black, whether it was Cody, whether it was Kenny Omega and the Elite, it doesn't matter. Everyone that has some form of creative control over their own booking is on their own little cloud, doing their own little thing, and it's like everyone else on the show be damned. It's amazing to me that AEW can book simultaneously one of the best wrestling stories in recent memory in any company. Not just AEW, any professional wrestling company, any major organization functioning today, between Punk and MJF. And all the while, on the same fucking show, I have to sit through the best friends garbage. I have to sit through the Beta Bucks nonsense. And all the nonsensical booking, the logic gaffes, the bad indie outlaw wrestling, the whole 9 yards. How does that happen? Where's the unification? Where's the one big happy family when it comes to the boys actually watching their own show and trying to learn and trying to pick out good material from the experienced workers that know what they're doing? Why is it that everyone's more obsessed with doing their own shit and going into business for themselves instead of actually trying to construct a weekly wrestling program with more great shit like MJF and CM Punk? Instead of all the other bad indie garbage we get on a week-by-week basis. You know, I think I heard Brian Last talk about this before, where he brought up a valid case for why the business actually hired agents and bookers to come up with the material and put the matches and segments together. Because more often than not, not always, because there's always exceptions to the rule, but in a lot of cases, it was probably always a safe bet to hire people for those agenting and booking roles so that the boys were not in full control of their own material. That way you avoid shit like guys going into business for themselves, or in other cases, putting control in the hands of people that know what they're doing, because sometimes even the wrestlers were not smart enough to book their own material and segments. Because they didn't have the experience. They weren't privy to what logical, coherent storylines were. They needed specific people to help them figure that shit out for them, to help them learn, to help them grow. And I know Tony Khan oversees everything that happens on this show. So in many ways, I should be placing the full blame on him. Because, you know, even if the Beta Bucks are overseeing a lot of their own stories and they're writing and constructing most of their content, as bad as it usually is, Tony's still signing off on it. He's still letting it play out every week on this goddamn show. You know, same thing goes with whatever input Malachi Black has with the whole spooky Dominion goon troop. How in the world this company has it so completely ass backwards where they have one consistently great program on a given week, and the rest of the time, it's complete and utter garbage? Still mind-boggling to me. Like WWE, I could at least make the same argument if I watched their show consistently. Because, I mean, let's be honest, aside from the Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar stuff, like, what are they doing? Does anybody care? Is anybody even remotely excited for WrestleMania? Like, you know, I've talked about this before. I have more of a vested interest in wanting AEW to succeed as a company. Because when these people get things right, it's usually great. And when they get things wrong, which is more often than not the case, it's really bad. And I just wish Tony had some balls to sit his boys down and force them to actually take into account all the great stuff that we've seen from Punk and MJF. At least they could conceivably benefit from it instead of passing it off and everyone staying in their own little collective bubble and doing their own little thing. So there's my little rant about the whole AEW ordeal. Wrestlers, boys, AEW locker room, within the sound of my voice if you can hear me, go back and watch CM Punk and MJF's story development from day one. Learn how to be fucking professional wrestlers. Learn how to be storytellers. Learn how to be great promos. Learn how to be compelling characters. Learn how to actually suck people into wanting to see you guys fighting. Stop feeding into the Bucks' middle school indie trampoline gymnastic routine bullshit. So then we got Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker for the AEW Women's World Championship. God almighty, you want to talk about the death slot. Poor girls. And this is actually a rare instance where I kind of empathize with the girls getting bad card placement. Because they worked hard here. They tried, but the crowd was mostly dead, and understandably so. I mean, the people just watched a 20-minute bloodbath match of the year less than 5 minutes prior, and then they expect the girls to go out there and put on something even remotely on par with it. And, and I think the best way I can describe it was pretty much how JR wrapped it up on commentary. Good match, too much outside interference. Like to the point where it just became ridiculous. I mean, Rebel and Jamie Hayter are running interference at multiple points during the fucking thing. And instead of the ref just ejecting them from ringside after the first run-in, he just lets them stay out there to stir up more shit. Why? Well, AEW officials are retards. How else can you be more blunt? And I guess my intuition was right all along. Rosa beating Britt clean on the go-home show was indeed used to set up Britt retaining here. Now, apparently the reason they did this was coming up with some convoluted scheme to apparently craft a build-up to a third match with Britt and Thunder Rosa, I would presume for the title match. And I guess that would happen in Thunder Rosa's hometown in a couple weeks. Probably where it'll end up being some kind of gimmick championship match where Rosa actually wins the title. Which, makes perfect sense in wrestling, right? Using the pay-per-view as a ploy to set up a future title change on free TV. Because, right, who would actually want to pay money to see a title switch when you can just air it on the television show? But I dare not question two-time Booker of the Year, because that would be sacrilege, would it not? Up next was Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson. Another program going in where, even though it involves Danielson, the involvement of Moxley just knocks it down about 6 tiers. God, this match was just weird. I honestly didn't even know how to really describe it when it was over. Other than the fact that it was just a really odd match. It wasn't bad. Maybe, I don't know, maybe boring is the best way to put it. And granted, that may have also just been pay-per-view fatigue starting to kick in, because this show did end up going a fucking eternity. The other thing is, I was already ambivalent about the match going in because I'm really not a fan of Jon Moxley's ring work, and like I said, I just haven't dug this program at all. To me, the whole thing just felt like Danielson was not really sure how to get out of first gear. Moxley's herky-jerky ring style is problematic in and of itself, and generally my biggest concern going in was that the whole thing would end up being a styles clash, and I don't know, it kind of came across that way. The double juice spot I wasn't all that fond of. Especially when we just saw it no less than 2 matches ago in a feud that actually called for blood. And I get they were building up the story with Mox telling Danielson on the TV show that he doesn't team with guys until he bleeds with them first, but sorry, not sorry. Mox's shit just looks so indie and fake. The stupid fake Japanese spots where the guys are doing stiff elbow blows, but, they're no-selling the shots and it barely looks like they're connecting at all. Jon Moxley's the king of fake stiff forearms. Can't tell you how many times I've seen a Jon Moxley match where he's doing forearm exchanges and he's not even pretending like he's making contact. And the finish was such a dud. Really? Both guys bleeding like stuffed pigs. They're essentially doing a Street Fighter style match. And your finish is Jon Moxley getting a flash roll-up on Bryan Danielson. You couldn't just go with the TKO finish to at least make it fit the mold of the ring style you were trying to portray. So they do the aftermath brawl with the Geeks filing out to separate them. And as soon as William Regal came out with the stank face, I seriously thought he was going to grab a microphone and just scream out, "War Games!" Which might have been the funniest WWE meme of 2021. But no, Instead, Regal comes down, slaps both guys across the face, makes them look like geeks, and then he forces them to shake one another's hand. Hoorah. Glad I got to enjoy Bryan Danielson's work in AEW while it lasted, because evidently I am now going to hate everything he's associated with, because I guess they really are going with the Mox-Danielson tag team. And however in the bloody hell Regal ties into all of this, I don't even know. With Tony Khan booking it, I never know what to expect. And no, that's not necessarily a good thing. So at this point in the show, it was late, I was tired, I was cranky, I really just wanted to get through the thing and go to bed. So I skipped through the 6-man top of the hour TV match with Andrade, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy versus Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, and Sting. I checked at the very end to see if Jeff Hardy debuted. He did not. While I was fast-forwarding, I saw what looked like a shit ton of crowd brawling and run-in bullshit from the AHFO crew. So it is probably safe to assume that I didn't miss much aside from the usual AEW Crash TV garbage. And then we got the mid-event match, Hangman Adam Page versus Adam Cole for the AEW World Championship. Cole coming out with that ridiculous-looking Transformer shoulder armor. God, I think that looked as lame as when Jeff Hardy used to come out with that Predator helmet in TNA years ago. Of course, JR with another classic slip-up during Hangman's intro, sitting there going, "Is Hangman sporting a new championship?" Tony Schiavone and Excalibur are like, no. What the fuck are you talking about, old man? And Jim just goes, "Looks new to me." He's totally given up. I also laughed at the part in the match where JR referred to both Cole and Page as being in shape. Good one, Jim. Call me next time you see Adam Cole pick up a pair of dumbbells. And to give you the impression of how much the fans really cared by this point in the show, this was where they all just basically went out there and started trying to amuse themselves. So we got chants of "Let's go Adam, Adam sucks." Also, I could be mistaken, but I believe there was a point where they also chanted "Fight for Adam" instead of "Fight forever." Credit where it's due, man. These people gave this match the reception that it deserved. And look, this is not a bad match. Like, Adam Cole's a good worker when he wants to be. Hangman Page has proven he can go in big matches. Of course, when he's in there with the right opponent. They had a perfectly acceptable main event world title match. It was not blowaway. It was not an instant classic. It was good enough. But between Cole's absolutely trash booking since he's shown up in AEW, jobbing at the goddamn company mascot, the cartoonish segments with the Beta Bucks, and the fact that this is his first real showcase match for Cole after something like 4 months of being with the company, like, it was just impossible for me to care about this or have any investment of the idea of Cole winning. And Hangman Page, like, I've already talked about his lack of oomph as the champion since the fallout to Full Gear. Every time I see Page on television, he comes off as a guy that happens to have possession of the AEW World title without actually feeling like he's actually fit for that role. Like I said, there were some okay elements to the match. I'll never get over how that top rope fall away slam that Hangman Page does is not the finish. Like, that thing looks so goddamn flawless every time he does it. And, of course, it's just another move. I think Cole got a tooth kicked out during this match. So, whatever good looks Cole had aside from the hair, that's gone now. Sure ain't getting by with his goddamn physique at this stage in the game. So, maybe losing the tooth will be a wake-up call for him. But by and large, it ended up breaking down into every AEW main event stupidity by the time we got to the end. 1,500 false finishes and kickouts, guys no-selling big moves to transition from spot to spot. All the shit at the end with them kicking out of their finishers and hitting each other with like 14 straight super kicks. Like, Jesus Christ, I almost wanted Shawn Michaels to just jump out of the crowd and drop them both with a shoot kick and walk out. Of course, we can blame the Bucks for completely abolishing any and all credibility the super kick actually used to have in wrestling. What once was a great finisher was completely neutered by those two Hardy Boy knockoff pansies. Of course, we had more running garbage at the end, which was just fucking annoying. And of course, it's every scripted out Beta Bucks brawl you've ever seen where they do middle school fake brawling around the ring. They all go up the ramp and they disappear behind the tunnel, probably giving each other hand jobs on the way to Gorilla so they can tell Tony what a wonderful job they all just did. Paige retaining was not all that surprising. You know, and after everything they've done to bury Adam Cole 10 feet under in the last 4 months, dude, he may as well just hang out in that hole for another 6 months and then come back with a new look. Maybe that point, some of the Orange Cassidy stain will have worn off by then. So what'd you all think? I mean, to be blunt, I guess I really shouldn't have expected any more than the one match going in that I knew was going to be great. I knew MJF and Punk were going to tear the house down, and everything else that would be on the show would just either be passable or flat out drizzling shits. And, well, I don't think I was too off base with that. Obviously, I will be in the minority with this recap, because all the AEW nut huggers and defenders are going to sit there and probably say something as ludicrous and preposterous as this being an all-time classic pay-per-view, like all the Meltzer cucks do after every AEW pay-per-view. Every AEW show, it's always an all-time classic. Because even though this company is waving more red flags in a communist Chinese parade, where apparently it's just supposed to look past those flaws and appreciate all the flippy-dippy no-sell gymnastic stunts that everyone gets a pass on. And to be honest, I didn't even really tear this one apart like I probably could have if I wanted to. I kind of touched on everything there is to say about the show over the last few weeks with Dynamite and Rampage. And I even talked about it a little bit ago with the Punk MJF match. Everybody on this show is part of their own inner collective circle doing their own thing, and there's nothing that unifies or binds any good ideas together. It's Punk MJF doing old school classic Mid-South wrestling and everybody else doing the modern trash. That dog collar match was everything done right with professional wrestling, while everything else was everything wrong with professional wrestling today. Bad indie level matches, inexperienced green workers that don't understand ring psychology or the importance of selling, terrible booking across the board, characters you're given no reason or rationale to care about, and payoffs that really don't feel like suitable pay-per-view quality payoffs. I don't know, man. I honestly don't know what to say anymore. Maybe I really should just start taking the Jim Cornette approach of fast-forwarding through more of the bad content and only watching the stuff that I deem good or the potential to be good. It'll certainly speed up the recaps going forward and save me some precious time that I could be devoting to something else. I love doing these podcast shows and I love talking about wrestling. But I would also like to talk about good professional wrestling. There's a reason you don't see me cover WWE content a whole lot on this channel. I really would like to hold out hope that AEW will learn from their mistakes and adopt from the playbook of Punk and MJF. Then maybe Tony Khan will watch that match back and he'll start dropping the hammer on some of the more outlaw goofballs on his roster and say, no, This is how this fucking company is going to operate. We're going to do more stuff like Punk and MJF. And if you don't like it, you can either learn to deal with it or you can go pound sand and get the fuck off my show. Now, of course, Tony will never say that because he doesn't have the balls to say that kind of stuff. What I'm saying is if he wants to run a long-term successful business, not just a long-standing wrestling business, but a long-standing business, period. Dude's going to have to grow a set at some point and learn to shut down some of the bad ideas that get tossed around on this show. So, we'll see what they build up toward whatever their next big pay-per-view spectacular is. I think it's Double or Nothing in May, right? So we're definitely a little ways out from there, but we'll keep covering Dynamite and Rampage in the meantime and see where the chips fall. Until Friday, where we continue with more wrestling content here on the FSWR channel. Thanks for stopping in. Again, make sure to subscribe, like the show, and leave a comment down below to share your thoughts on what we covered today. What did you think of the Revolution pay-per-view? Am I too harsh? Was I not harsh enough? I don't know. If you were expecting a more optimistic recap of the Revolution pay-per-view, clearly you have not been watching the podcast before, or you just haven't been following my AEW coverage. I don't want you to think I'm biased. I don't want you to think that I have this predetermined notion to hate and dispute everything AEW does. If I did, A, I wouldn't be talking about it, and B, I wouldn't have praised anything on the show like I did with that Punk MJF match. I've talked about it before. When AEW delivers good content and they earn a good review, I will give it to them. And when they feed me bullshit, you best believe I'm going to call them out for it. The problem is the imbalance between the bad and good material. They feed me a lot of terrible stuff, so I'm going to call them out for it. Because I want their company to grow. I want their company to succeed. I want them to actually be a viable competition to WWE. So, again, let me know what you thought of the show. Be great to hear some feedback on it. Until Friday, take care all. Peace out.